May 1989, Moscow. At the entrance of one of the apartment buildings on Korabelnaya Street, a disturbance began. Paramedics, residents of the building entrance, and just passers-by surrounded the lifeless body of a woman lying on the asphalt right under the windows of the building. The woman fell from the 5th floor in broad daylight. Very young, no more than 25 years old, slim, fair-haired. She died instantly from the impact with the asphalt. Despite the body being covered, a person identified the deceased as a neighbor from their building. They mentioned the name Nataliya Tikhonova, and soon more details about her emerge. Not long ago, Nataliya's young child suffered from severe poisoning, and her husband, the well-known cardiologist Igor Tikhonov, has been bedridden for several months. He has cancer in the final stage. Now, after Nataliya's death, the man is left completely alone. Poor Dr. Tikhonov. One misfortune after another, the neighbors shake their heads. But after a little while, it will become clear that there was no need to feel sorry for Igor Tikhonov. The poisoning of the child and the death of his wife were stages of his diabolical plan. Text author exclusively for the Strashnota channel. Igor Tikhonov was already over 50 when he met his future wife, Nataliya. A very young woman, just 22 years old, came to the hospital where Tikhonov worked asking for help. Her child was dying. Roma Prokhorov, the son of Nataliya and her then husband Alexei, was born with a complex heart defect. Because of a defect in the internal septum, arterial and venous blood in his heart were constantly mixing. The boy was developing poorly, had trouble gaining weight, and frightened his parents with the bluish color of his skin. The doctors almost immediately after the child's birth warned Nataliya and Alexei, with such a defect the boy was unlikely to live to 18. Sooner or later, the body will run out of strength and then Roma's heart will simply stop. The parents had to accept that their child was not really living, but merely surviving the short time allotted to him. As for the surgery that could help deal with the defect, it was too risky. The child is very weak, and there is a high probability that he would die on the operating table. Nataliya begged the doctors to try, but no one wanted to take responsibility for the outcome. And yet, the woman could not accept such a terrible prognosis. She decided to fight for life until the end. The Prokhorovs appeared to have journeyed across the Soviet Union, visiting 3 hospitals in total. Already back in Moscow, they learned about Dr. Tikhonov, who operates on small children. Nataliya ran to him, ready to beg on her knees, "Save my child." Tikhonov observed little Roma, conducted an examination to assess the risks, and agreed. The operation was successful. All the defects in Roma's heart were closed and the boy quickly began to recover. Nataliya was overwhelmed with gratitude toward her son's savior. By that time, her marriage to Alexei Prokhorov had already fallen apart. The boy's father couldn't handle the stress and left both his wife and child, disappearing in an unknown direction. Igor Tikhonov, a gentle, intelligent and serious man, turned out to be the complete opposite of her frivolous husband. He was willing to discuss Roma's health for hours, supported Nataliya, praised her determination and selflessness, and the woman didn't notice how her gratitude grew into something more. When Tikhonov proposed to her, Nataliya agreed without hesitation. She wasn't bothered by the 30-year age difference or his unwillingness to have children with Nataliya. Tikhonov had an adult daughter, Victoria, who was just a little younger than Nataliya, in her early 50s. He didn't want to become a father again. Besides, they already had a little child, Roma, whom they had both saved. There was already enough trouble. The boy, fair-haired like his mother, was gentle and obedient and quickly grew attached to his new dad, especially since he hardly remembered his real father. Nataliya informed her ex-husband that their son had been cured. But Prokhorov never visited Roma, neither in the hospital nor at Tikhonov's apartment. He also didn't pay any child support. Nataliya felt hurt, but she comforted herself. She wouldn't have to raise the boy alone anyway. Igor would be a father to him. But Igor Tikhonov himself had a different opinion about this. An adult, already elderly man had no time to raise someone else's child. Moreover, the owner Tikhonov didn't like that Nataliya spent so much time with her son. The man wanted his young wife to always be with him, to satisfy his whims, cook his favorite dishes, and listen to his stories about the operation. Roma often climbed onto his mother's lap in the middle of a conversation or ran up to ask her to play with toys together. Tikhonova found this irritating and infuriating. He is the man, the breadwinner, the head of the family. He is the one who should get all the attention. This child is just getting underfoot, and Nataliya can't keep him in line. Tikhonov briefly endured the situation in silence shortly after moving in with Nataliya. He gave the child a separate room and set strict rules for moving around the apartment. She was not allowed to leave her room without her mother, except to go to the bathroom, get some water, or eat. If mom's out, leave the door ajar. Walk, don't run in the hall. Open and close the door gently, no slamming, no friends over. Nataliya tried to stand up for her son. He is just a child, but Tikhonov suppressed any resistance right from the start. I perform complex heart surgeries on which human lives depend, he reminded Nataliya. When I return home, I want to spend time with my wife, most importantly, in peace and quiet. Your child is too noisy and unruly, he doesn't let me rest. Nataliya immediately felt guilty. Her husband is right, he saves human lives every day, and after a hard day at work, he deserves to rest in peace and quiet. After all, he's not young anymore. She really spoiled Romka while he was sick. She allowed him everything and didn't really punish him. It's time to finally start working on his upbringing. 3-year-old Romka never really understood what he did wrong. At first, when left alone in the room, he cried and acted up, but soon he got used to it. The attachment that quickly formed to his new dad, Uncle the doctor who healed him, faded away just as quickly. He only missed his mom, whom he saw less often now, but his mom often brought him new toys and cooked his favorite food. Roma and Igor Tikhonov only met at the table or on the way to the bathroom, and Tikhonov was more than satisfied with this arrangement. He was eagerly waiting for the child to grow up. As soon as he did, he could be sent to the cadet school, getting rid of someone else's kid who was taking Nataliya away from him. Again and again, he would talk to his wife about how, in the military school, her frail and weak child would be turned into a real man. Despite her guilt towards her son, Nataliya felt her relationship with her husband had improved. Tikhonov became affectionate and caring, and on weekends he would find time to take her to a restaurant, give her gifts, and bring her flowers. She tried as well. Igor frequently returned from work exhausted, ate, and promptly went to bed. Nataliya would get up early to make breakfast, and she spent her days taking care of the house, keeping everything clean. Tikhonov enjoyed feeling his wife's care, but he didn't like realizing that other men were paying attention to his beautiful and young wife. Nataliya was attractive and knew how to dress well. Tikhonov would get jealous whenever he noticed other men looking at her. Several times, this caused unpleasant scenes in the family. Nataliya tried to explain herself. She loved her husband. He was the only man for her. Tikhonov accepted her explanations, but heavy thoughts tormented him at night. They became increasingly frequent over time. 2 years after their marriage, Igor was diagnosed with a terrible disease, cancer. The constant fatigue, as it turned out, was not just related to work. The cancer was already making itself known back then, but Tikhonov blamed everything on stress and age and didn't get checked until things got really bad. Following tests and exams, it was clear that nothing more could be done. There were metastases in all the organs. With less than a year left, Igor Tikhonov quit his job and became bedridden. Nataliya had no time for her son anymore. She had to take care of her husband, bring him water, make sure he took his medicine, and comfort him when the pain was too much. Tikhonov was a demanding and capricious patient. Nataliya spent all evening by his bedside. Hide and seek, Romka's favorite game, was their only remaining entertainment. When Nataliya came home from work, the boy most often hid in the closet. She pretended not to know where he was, walked around the apartment for a long time, and looked under the tables. Romka waited with bated breath for his mom to find him and laughed gleefully. As Nataliya opened the wardrobe doors, she whispered, "Quiet, don't laugh, you'll wake up Uncle Igor." "Igor, stand." The boy instantly fell silent and looked fearfully at the bedroom door. On that day, in mid-May of 1987, when Nataliya came home from work, the apartment was quiet. She peeked into the bedroom. Tikhonov was lying in bed and seemed to be asleep. Romka was nowhere to be seen, and the woman decided that as usual he was hiding from her in the closet. She walked through the rooms, following her usual routine, and then finally opened the closet. "Aha, got you." Little Romka was there, curled up under the coats, asleep. He had likely fallen asleep waiting for his mother to return from work. She shook him by the shoulder. "Wake up, sleepyhead." His shoulder was cold and Romka didn't respond. Frightened, Nataliya pulled the boy toward her, causing him to fall from the closet onto the floor. Her son's face was white as snow, and he seemed not to be breathing. Nataliya screamed in fear and rushed to call an ambulance. Lying on the bed in the bedroom, Tikhonov smiled with satisfaction and, turning onto his side, finally fell asleep peacefully. The doctors who arrived examined the boy and determined that Roma was alive but in a deep coma. An open box of medicines was found on the kitchen table, the home first aid kit, in which Tikhonov also kept his own medicines. Empty blister packs were scattered around. Nataliya saw how many there were and clutched her heart. Did Roma actually overdose on pills? And why was the first aid kit, normally stored in the cabinet, found on the kitchen table? But there was no time for questions. The child needed saving. Roma was rushed to the hospital in serious condition, and there they immediately pumped his stomach. In the stomach washings, they actually found painkiller tablets, and in quite a large dosage. But for a deep coma to develop, there should have been much more of them. Someone else could have been involved in the poisoning case, but it was no longer the hospital's responsibility to investigate, it was up to the police. On that very same day, investigators visited the Tikhonov family's apartment. Shaken by what had happened, Nataliya greeted the officers with tears in her eyes, showed them the medicine cabinet, and told them how she had found her son in the closet. Igor Tikhonov, pale from pain, stroked his wife's hand as she spoke, but suddenly couldn't hold back. "It's my fault. Because of me, our son was poisoned." He said that he started feeling unwell during the day, and that he went to the kitchen to get some painkillers from the medicine cabinet. It didn't help, so we had to call a nurse from the hospital to give him a stronger medication. Apparently, he absent-mindedly left the box of medicine on the table. Romka, a young child, was playing and ran into the kitchen. Upon seeing the first aid kit, he swallowed a bunch of pills. The investigators agreed with the suggested version after questioning. After all, they're just children, and not much can be expected from them. They're always tempted to try adult vitamins. As they left, an investigator remarked to the other, "Did you notice? They have a child, but there are no children's toys in the room." I was more focused on his companion, Nataliya Tikhonova. She seemed like she wanted to say something to her husband when he was talking about the forgotten first aid kit, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. The investigators decided to gather more information about the Tikhonov family, especially about how the parents treated little Romka. The teacher willingly told the investigators everything she knew. Roma is a reserved child who often plays alone in the corner. He has no friends and is frequently bullied by other children. Just yesterday, Romka couldn't make it to the bathroom in time and wet his tights. The other kids laughed at him. The caregiver had to call Nataliya at work so she could come pick him up. The investigators could imagine the boy's humiliation. Most likely, Roma cried and probably said that he would never go to kindergarten again. But could a 5-year-old child try to take his own life? There has never been such statistics for 5-year-olds. The investigation immediately dismissed this version. However, the teacher told something else as well. As it turned out, a week before the tragedy, a man came to the kindergarten who introduced himself as Roma's father, Alexei Prokhorov. Prokhorov intended to take the child, but the teacher did not give Roma to the man. Prokhorov had never come to the kindergarten before. No one here knew him, and Nataliya hadn't warned anyone that someone else would be coming for the boy this time. While Prokhorov was trying to persuade the teacher to let his son go with him, Nataliya herself appeared. The man and woman stepped aside, their heated conversation inaudible but clearly intense. In the end, even the teacher heard this phrase. Nataliya said Alexei should start paying child support if he wants to be a father. What was heard needed to be discussed with Nataliya Tikhonova. Prokhorov could have been involved in what happened in one way or another, but the investigators were late. The very next day, the woman died after falling out of a window. When the investigators entered the Tikhonov apartment, the owner, as usual, was lying in bed. Igor said that about an hour before she jumped, Nataliya called the hospital to find out about her son's condition. The news was terrible. The doctor said that Roma had died. Nataliya told her husband this news and went to the kitchen while he fell asleep. "A witch," suggested Tikhonov. A mother's heart could not bear the grief. Nataliya took her own life after learning about her son's death. The investigators examined the open window and took fingerprints from the frame. One of them noticed a piece of rye bread lying on the floor right by the window. Tikhonov shrugged, thinking Romka probably ate it. Nataliya often makes crackers for the boy. The cracker was taken too. No signs of struggle were found in the room. Nataliya seemed to have a motive to end her own life. The theory turned out to be viable, but it needed further verification. The investigators called the hospital to check if Nataliya had called there. Imagine their surprise when the doctors told them that Roma was alive, the boy was getting better, and he would soon recover. No one at the hospital knew anything about a call from Nataliya. The investigators returned to Igor. The man seemed stunned by the news, cursed the negligence of the doctors, which led to his wife taking her own life, and swore that he would not let this go unpunished. He repeated that it was a terrible, unforgivable mistake. "If I weren't sick, I would go to that hospital right now and look those people in the eye." The patient's indignation seemed quite sincere, but the version that Nataliya had taken her own life began to raise doubts. They grew stronger when the investigators received the forensic expert's report. It turned out that Nataliya had a pre-mortem hematoma on her head, an injury sustained from a blow at a time when the woman was still alive. It became clear that Nataliya was first knocked unconscious and then thrown out of the window. But Tikhonov, exhausted by illness and cancer, would not have been able to either strike his wife with such force or lift her to throw her over the windowsill. Perhaps a stranger had been in the apartment. In any case, the investigators intended to talk to Nataliya's ex-husband, Alexei Prokhorov, so they headed to him. Alexei was at home and opened the door, but when he saw the police, he suddenly recoiled, slammed the door shut, and locked himself inside. The officers had to break down the door to enter the apartment. Prokhorov was discovered in the bathroom, hands shaking as he flushed pills down the toilet. He was restrained and the pills seized. The examination revealed that the drugs were potent and prescription only. During the interrogation, Prokhorov shared intriguing details about the pills and his former spouse. It turned out that some time ago, right when Tikhonov fell ill, Nataliya found her ex-husband and asked him for help. Prokhorov worked as a pharmacist in a drugstore and always had access to strong medications. No painkillers were helping Tikhonov anymore, and he suffered and groaned day and night without relief. "Help me," she asked Prokhorov. "Get the medicine, I'll pay you." Prokhorov needed money, so he agreed. Alexei forged a prescription for his wife, and to his surprise, it turned out to be easy. Soon he repeated the attempt for an acquaintance, and clients started to appear. Prokhorov made peace with his conscience quickly when he saw the money. He improved his financial situation, renovated his home, and bought a car. Nataliya's visit made Alexei remember that he had a son. He started to miss Romka, wanted to see him, and so one day he visited the kindergarten. Prokhorov informed the investigators that Tikhonov has an adult daughter named Victoria. Victoria leads a reckless lifestyle, doesn't work anywhere, and only visits her father to ask for money. Nataliya spoke badly about her, calling her ungrateful. After Tikhonov's death, Victoria will inherit a good fortune. Maybe the unwillingness to share is what pushed Tikhonov's wayward daughter to commit the crime. The investigators decided to check this version as well. Victoria's address was found quickly, but for some reason it wasn't her who opened the door. It was some man with prison tattoos. When he saw the officers, he also tried to run away. They chased after him, but couldn't catch him. When Victoria returned, she cleared things up. She explained that the man with the tattoos who ran away was her fiancé, Gennady Oreshkin. Gennady had been convicted twice for robbery and causing serious bodily harm, and in total he had served 10 years in prison. Victoria didn't know where Gennady had run off to, but the investigators had their own theories. They checked the locations of the nearest dachas in Malin, where criminal elements used to gather. It turned out that a man with tattoos had recently settled in one of them. According to the description, he looked like Gennady Oreshkin. In addition, it turned out that Gennady was a big fan of rye crackers, which he always carried with him in his pocket. The investigators remembered the cracker found in the Tikhonov apartment. This person could not be overlooked. After another chase, Oreshkina was tracked down and finally caught. During the initial interrogation, he denied knowing Nataliya Tikhonova and claimed his relationship with Victoria was purely out of love. but the fingerprints matched those that were found on the window in the apartment. To top it all off, the ill-fated cracker was presented as evidence. It was Oreshkin who broke it. The man said that the person who ordered the so-called demise of Nataliya Tikhonova was none other than her husband, Igor Tikhonov. He contacted him himself as soon as he found out from his daughter that she was seeing a former criminal and asked for a meeting. Oreshkin almost expected that Tikhonov would order him to stay away from Victoria, but instead he surprised him. "There's a job that you can handle better than anyone. I need to get rid of my wife. Do everything quickly, quietly, and make it look like an accident or that she took her own life. I'll pay well. There's an inheritance that will go to my useless Victoria. Marry her for an apartment, car, and country house. I think for something like that, you could even put up with my brainless daughter." Tikhonov blessed the criminal to marry his daughter with an easy heart, just to get rid of Nataliya. Oreshkin thought about it and agreed, all the more so because he had already figured out how to pull it all off. That day Nataliya didn't call anyone and moreover didn't receive any terrible news. Exhausted from crying, she fell asleep at the kitchen table. Oreshkin had the keys to the apartment, which Tikhonov had given him. He sneaked into the kitchen, holding a bat in his hands, and raised it to strike. Nataliya sat up when she heard footsteps, but she didn't have time to understand anything. The blow hit her head, causing Nataliya to slide to the floor unconscious. Oreshkin confirmed she was knocked out and went to the window. During the journey, he used a handkerchief from his pocket to cover the window handle, avoiding any traces. That's when a small piece of dried bread fell out of his pocket. The window sash was hard to open, requiring a strong pull. That's when Oreshkin left fingerprints. He grabbed the sash with his fingers and didn't notice. He dragged the victim to the window and pushed her over the windowsill. Nataliya fell down. Hearing the distinctive sound, Oreshkin waited a little, but everything was quiet. And then he went into Tikhonov's room to report, "Everything is done." Oreshkin's confession allowed the investigation to understand how Nataliya actually died, but her husband's motives remained unclear. After all, Igor Tikhonov loved Nataliya, was jealous, wanted her to always be with him, so why would he want to get rid of her? Tikhonov's interrogation clarified everything. From the very first day of married life, Igor was deeply troubled by the thought that he would probably die before his wife. Young and beautiful Nataliya would hardly grieve for him for the rest of her life. She would mourn a little and then get married again. Tikhonov felt abandoned and deceived. He tried to comfort himself. So, he isn't planning to die anytime soon, and by that time Nataliya will already be older. Who would need her then? Worn out and with a child. And suddenly, like a bolt from the blue, the diagnosis of cancer struck. Tikhonov was a doctor himself and understood that he didn't have much time left to live, and then all his fears would come true. His wife will sleep with another man, Nataliya will cheat on him, on the dead Tikhonov. The solution came unexpectedly and it seemed brilliant. Nataliya wouldn't be able to find another man if she died together with her husband. Just as Indian widows ascend the funeral pyre together with their deceased husbands, so too must Nataliya sacrifice herself when her husband dies. Of course, Tikhonov understood that the woman herself would never agree to this. She has a child, a purpose in life, and besides, their love isn't exactly otherworldly. For Tikhonov, Nataliya's child had been like a thorn in his side all these years, so he decided to get rid of Roma as well. When Nataliya was at work, he mixed strong medication and sugar in a glass, prepared a couple of painkiller tablets, and called Romka into the kitchen. "Drink this, these are vitamins for your heart." The boy knew that vitamins for the heart could be bitter. He had already taken many like that. He trusted Uncle Igor for saving his life. Obediently, Romka swallowed both the pills and the sweet water and soon lost consciousness. Then Tikhonov laid the child in the closet and with the last of his strength somehow made his way to the kitchen. Taking out the home first aid kit, he put it on the table. To create the appearance that it was Roma himself who took the pills, Tikhonov emptied a couple of packages and left them on the table. He flushed the pills down the toilet. After that, Igor returned to bed and began to wait for Nataliya to come home from work. His wife was devastated by grief, but somehow the boy managed to survive. Tikhonov was angry knowing time was running out, but he couldn't do anything else about his disliked stepson. He had to stick to the plan. Nataliya had to die, and as soon as possible. While Romka was in the hospital, he called Oreshkin and asked him to come. He carried out the plan quietly and quickly. But neither he nor Tikhonov managed to outsmart the investigation. Igor saved the lives of strangers, but cold-bloodedly destroyed those who were closest to him. He died in the prison hospital from cancer complications before the trial. Little Roma, after recovering, returned to his father. Alexei Prokhorov received a suspended sentence for forging prescriptions. This was enough for the man. He came to his senses, left his criminal life behind and began anew. This time, there was a place in it for his son as well. Roman Tikhonov grew up, graduated from medical school and works as a doctor. If she were alive, Nataliya could be proud of her child.